Thank you, audience at home, for joining us. All right, so I will be reading for you some words from Chloe's mentor. He's traveling right now. As you know, this is a rescheduled event because of the weather, and so he was going to be here in person, and he is still traveling from another obligation that he had. So. Anyway, so what Keith had said to me and shared with me is that they were very happy and lucky to have Chloe for an entire year, and that it's very uncommon to find somebody who is interested in policy and has that discipline to do the reading, to do the research, the information, and to ask questions. And one of the things that Keith wanted me to share out is that Chloe honestly asked questions sometimes that he didn't have the answer for. And so it prompted him and them to do that research. And that through this internship, having Chloe as the professional intern, that he was able to have a better understanding of fishery policy also. And he really wanted to share out that, and Chloe will touch about this in her presentation, that there were many hurdles and obstacles that she had to overcome, but that she was very patient with the federal government, very flexible and understanding of these challenges and these challenging times, to work on any task that they threw her way. Keith and his division were extremely grateful, are extremely grateful for all the work that she did with them, and that her work expanded outside their organization and even to their partners. And with that, it is my pleasure, and of course Keith's, to bring Chloe up here to share.
Thank you all for being here today. My name is Chloe Winter, and the title of my talk is Sustainable Fisheries in the Main Hawaiian Islands. My mentor is Keith Kamikawa. He's a fisheries management specialist at the Pacific Islands Regional Office within the Sustainable Fisheries Division, with Lisa being our advisor. I broke up my talk into chapters. So the prologue, I'll talk a little bit about why I began, about myself. Chapters 1 through 4 are more the nitty-gritties of my internship. And then at the epilogue, just kind of what I learned and who I am now. Before I talk about my internship experience, I wanted to share a little bit about where I come from and how I got to where I am today. I'm originally from California's Central Valley, in a small agriculture town surrounded by almond orchards. So that is the top picture on the left-hand side. So living here, the ocean wasn't part of my everyday life. So the closest coast was about an hour and a half away in San Francisco. Being far from the ocean actually sparked my curiosity about it. And one moment that really stands out to me is seeing my now favorite fish, the mola mola, at the Monterey Bay Aquarium. That experience made the ocean feel real and exciting, and it really fueled my passion for marine science. And most importantly, my family's support and encouragement in my education allowed me to pursue that curiosity and turn it into a passion for marine conservation. So on the right-hand side, that's my family. So my mom, my brother, and my dad. And in the middle are my grandparents. Experience in education, I wanted to continue to graduate school because there's still so much I wanted to learn beyond my undergrad. And I'll be honest, the idea of a thesis project was really intimidating, which is one of the reasons why I was drawn to UH Hilo. It offered a professional internship track that allowed me to focus on applied experience while still continuing my education, and it felt like the next step for me. As I learned more about marine conservation, I realized that policy and management are where some of the most meaningful change happens. Fisheries sit at the center of the intersection between ecosystems and people. At its core, fisheries management asks a difficult but essential question of how do we commercially harvest from the ocean in a way that sustains both marine life and communities? How do we balance commercial activity with environmental responsibility? I saw graduate school as a way to gain the professional experience and skills that I would need to enter the workforce and look into those answers to those difficult questions. During my time at Hilo, I gained more than just experience, and it deepened my understanding of how science, policy, and people are all connected. Fisheries in January of 2025, working through December of 2025 at the Pacific Islands Regional Office within the Sustainable Fisheries Division. When I received my initial email from my mentor outlining the internship, I was honestly so excited. On paper, my main role was to support the proposed rulemaking package for the 2026-2028 annual catch limits and accountability measures for deepwater shrimp and precious coral fisheries in the main Hawaiian Islands. That meant developing components of the rulemaking package, drafting supporting memos, contributing to documentation, and working within multiple federal laws like the Magnuson-Stevens Act, the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA, and the Coastal Zone Management Act. During my internship, I was also expected to attend internal meetings and broader fishery meetings for exposure for how management decisions are made. More than anything, what excited me was the opportunity to better understand how federal fisheries system works. So on the middle, you can see those little specks are deepwater shrimp, and then on either side, those are different types of precious coral species. Everything outlined on the previous slide was on its way towards completion. The internship quickly evolved into more than what was just originally on paper. As the year progressed, there were new opportunities and projects that emerged, and my role expanded across multiple areas within the division and across other divisions. I didn't just work with deepwater shrimp and precious coral. I also contributed to applied research and literature synthesis projects. I worked on other federal documentation and publication support. I also had opportunities to engage in stakeholder and community processes in person, write a successful grant, and resume building and professional development work as well. The internship became much broader than just rulemaking support. It became truly an immersive experience in federal fisheries, policy research, communication, and stakeholder engagement. If you're not familiar with the Pacific Islands Regional Office is located in Oahu, so my internship was fully remote. My mentor and the Sustainable Fisheries Division were based in Honolulu while I was working in Hawaii. So on the left-hand side is the Pacific Islands Regional Office, and on the right is me, actually in this building right across the way, because the staff here is able to let me come here during the summer to complete some of my hours and work within a broader NOAA community. Because of the structure being remote, there is heavy reliance on documentation and written communication, where most collaboration happened through emails, shared documents, and virtual meetings. During working in this environment required a high level of independence and trust. I had to manage my time, track projects carefully, and communicate. And my mentor and the team trusted me to contribute meaningfully from a distance, and it is definitely a learning curve, but it pushed me to be more organized, more proactive, and more confident in my professional communication. Right at the same time as the new federal administration entered office in January of 2025, and that significantly shaped the work environment. Several executive orders were issued that affected fisheries management and regulatory review processes, including shifts in priorities related to commercial fisheries in the Pacific. At the same time, NOAA introduced new NEPA guidance in the middle of our deepwater shrimp and precious coral making work, requiring us to adjust documentation and review processes in real time. There's also federal hiring freeze, internal team changes, travel restrictions, administrative constraints, and the longest federal government shutdown in history. During that time, my internship was temporarily paused and shifted towards non-federal work and projects during the shutdown. Overall, priorities shifted, timelines changed, and additional layers of review were introduced. At times, it was challenging, but it was one of the most eye-opening parts of my experience. I witnessed how federal employees navigate political transitions while maintaining the commitment to their work. Further into the policy work, I wanted to outline where federal fisheries jurisdiction is in the Pacific region. In Hawaii, state waters extend from the shoreline to about 3 nautical miles, and beyond that, from 3 nautical miles to 200 nautical miles is federal water, or also known as the Economic Exclusive Zone. Fisheries in federal waters are managed by NOAA Fisheries, working in coordination with the regional fishery management councils. In the Pacific Islands region, that jurisdiction spans more than 1.7 million square nautical miles of ocean across Hawaii, American Samoa, Guam, and the Northern Marina Islands. So this is a map of the representation of the Pacific Islands region. You can see Hawaii is on the top right, and each red line around each territory and atoll is the economic exclusive zone. So understanding that scale helps put in perspective how layered and complex federal fisheries management is in the Pacific. Is and information actually move through the federal management system. The process begins with scientific and community information. So this can include stock assessments, monitoring data, applied research, and concerns raised by fishing communities. That information is first reviewed by the advisory panel and then evaluated by the Scientific and Statistical Committee, or the SSC. The SSC reviews the available science and sets scientific boundaries to guide management decisions. Next, the Regional Fishery Management Council used that scientific guidance along with stakeholder input and public comment to recommend management actions. So these actions can include setting catch limits, modifying accountability measures, or proposing amendments to a fishery management plan. Once the council makes a recommendation, it's sent to NOAA Fisheries for federal review. NOAA Fisheries ensures the recommendation is consistent with laws like the Magnuson-Stevens Act and conducts the required environmental analysis under the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA. So NEPA requires federal agencies to evaluate and publicly disclose the environmental impacts of the proposed regulations before they're finalized. So after this review, NOAA Fisheries develops draft rules and publishes them to the Federal Register as proposed rules, which opens a formal public comment period. After considering those comments, the agency publishes a final rule, which then goes into effect. So in all simplified terms, the process moves from science and community need to council recommendation to federal review and then to implementation. Was the 2023 amended Guam Marine Conservation Plan notice that I worked on during my internship. Unlike a new fishery management plan or regulation that goes through the advisory panel and the SSC process described earlier, the amendment followed a more focused pathway. So the amendment was submitted to the council for review, then forwarded to NOAA Fisheries. And my role involved supporting NOAA Fisheries review, drafting both internal and public-facing documents, and preparing the notice for publication within the Federal Register. I worked on this notice before assisting in the deepwater shrimp and precious squirrel fishery proposed rulemaking package, and I'm grateful I did because it gave me experience in understanding the process of drafting and formatting federal documents. Marked my first Federal Register publication. This is a photo of what an example and of that notice in the Federal Register is. So the Federal Register is the federal government's daily official publication for rules, proposed rules, and notices. It's where agencies communicate regulatory actions to public, which includes summary, background information, instructions for public comment. So it was exciting to see this published and to know the work that I contributed became publicly available. With this year, that is deepwater shrimp and precious coral. On the left here is deepwater shrimp. In Hawaii, deepwater shrimp live hundreds of meters below the surface along steep slopes and are often found on flat and sandy substrates. Unlike shallow water shrimp, they can live up to 8 years and don't reach maturity until about 4 or 5 years. Some species may even reproduce only once in their lifetime, and some can carry up to 3,000 eggs beneath their abdomen. They play important roles in deep sea food webs and are a food source for larger marine species. On the right-hand side is a precious coral. Biologically, these precious corals are remarkable for their longevity and their slow growth. There are three different types of precious coral here in Hawaii that are protected by federal regulation. The first are black corals. Black corals can take 10 to 12 years just to reach reproductive maturity and may live over 75 years. They have this fluffy appearance to them, which is very different than the reef-building corals you may think on our coastlines. Living tissues can be orange, red, yellow while alive, and their skeletons are actually black. And it's actually pretty awesome. This is a black coral right here. So you can see that it's branch-like, really thin. So yeah, it's nice to see a species in person after working with them for the last year. There's also pink and red corals that grow only micrometers per year and can live for decades. And last, gold corals, which are among the longest living marine organisms with estimated ages up to 2,700 years. These life histories of slow growth and late maturity, extreme longevity are what make these species both incredible and vulnerable. Fisheries are small participation fisheries in Hawaii, and although small, they're still active in the main Hawaiian Islands. Precious corals and deepwater shrimp fisheries have been federally managed since 2012 in coordination with State Council and NOAA Fisheries. These fisheries are grouped under the same rulemaking package and are protected under annual catch limits, which set the maximum amount that can be harvested per year, accountability measures, which are management controls to ensure annual catch limits are not exceeded, and in addition to federal and state permitting requirements. For deepwater shrimp, only a few permitted vessels participate each year. They operate using trap-based fishing methods and gear regulations on how big their traps can be. The fishery has been operating since the 1960s, but landings have declined significantly since their peak in 1998. Between 2018 and 2021, the annual commercial value has averaged around $76,000, and actual harvest remains well below the established catch limits. On the left-hand side is a photo from a study done in 1972 about different trap-based methods, and on the right is an example of a deepwater shrimp boat. The precious coral fishery is similarly small. Commercial exploitation began with the discovery of a black coral bed off Lahaina, Maui in 1958 by Jack Ackerman and Larry Winley. This discovery catalyzed the development of small-scale industry with divers selectively harvesting coral. The fishery grew gradually, and by the mid-1960s, several small businesses operated in Maui and Oahu. Today, black coral is harvested commercially and primarily used in jewelry. A weighted average price value of $84.50 per pound from 2006 to 2025. So the video you just saw is how black corals are selectively harvested by divers, and then they're brought to the surface to be retrieved. Gold coral harvest has been under a federal moratorium, where there's a pause on all harvesting since 2008 because of their extremely slow growth and long lifespan. And since 2012, all federal permits for precious coral have been exclusively applied to the black coral fishery. Despite their small scale, these fisheries operate within sensitive, slow to recover deep sea habitats where ecological and biological data are very limited. The species targeted in these fisheries grow slow, they mature late, and recover slowly from disturbance. Because these habitats occur at depths that are difficult to study, changes or damage may occur before they're fully detected or understood. So that's why the 2026 through 2028 rulemaking package is important. Even while harvest levels are low and participation is limited, annual catch limits, accountability measures, and permitting requirements are still essential to ensure precautionary harvesting practices. In fisheries management, precaution isn't only about responding to decline, but it's about preventing it. Even small fisheries in remote waters require thoughtful oversight to remain sustainable in the future. So on the picture on the right is the picture of Jack Ackerman and Larry Winley with black coral that they harvested. And on the left, this is the main project I worked on for the entirety of my internship from January 2025 until December 2025. And the timeline for this was all background and research from January until April. This was for understanding the fisheries, the species, and the regulation processes. From April to May, I was given past rulemaking packages and templates to learn from. So I spent my time studying how similar actions were structured before drafting the 13 documents within the Deepwater Shrimp and Precious Coral package, which was a total of 62 pages. These documents and memos are for internal use within the division, within the Pacific Islands Regional Office, and within NOAA headquarters. There are some documents that are public facing, like the draft proposed rule, and then what ends up actually being published in the Federal Register. The biggest learning curve during these first few months was getting comfortable with the technical language and the really specific formatting requirements and the many, many acronyms used in federal rulemaking. By June and July, I was drafting and revising NEPA documentation and supporting documents more confidently. In the fall months, I applied what I learned independently to draft a document for The Economist, and finally moved all documents through multiple rounds of edits for a more finalized version, and then elevated through the hierarchical chain for final approvals. And the status right now, it's at review at the General Counsel, which they look over all attorneys' review for all accuracy in litigation right now. So it's not published yet, but hopefully this year. The biggest things I learned from my internship is that fisheries management is really about people. Federal fisheries management is built around a structured and transparent public process. Regional council meetings, scientific and statistical committee meetings, advisory panel meetings take place 4 times per year. The process begins with the advisory panel. These panels include fishermen, industry members, and other stakeholders who bring in their real-world experience and community concerns forward. They develop recommendations that reflect what's happening on the water. And then the Scientific and Statistical Committee then reviews and provides that scientific guidance. The Regional Council brings these perspectives together, and council members consider scientific advice, stakeholder input, and public comment before developing recommendations on management measures such as catch limits or seasonal closures. Those recommendations are then sent to NOAA Fisheries for review and implementation through the federal rulemaking. What stood out to me was that public engagement happens at every stage. Each meeting includes opportunities for public comment, and the process is designed to be transparent and inclusive. During my internship with the Sustainable Fisheries Division, I virtually attended all 4 council meetings, 3 SSC meetings, and 2 advisory panel meetings. Seeing this process unfold throughout the year helped me really understand how these decisions are actually made. It showed me that fisheries management isn't about fish, but it's about balancing science, livelihoods, and meaningful participation. Outside of quarterly meetings, I had the opportunity to participate in community-based meetings in Hilo and Kona in 2025. These meetings were part of the Hawaiian Islands Community Consultations organized by the Western Pacific Fisheries Management Council and the Pacific Islands Fisheries Group to better understand urgent issues occurring at the community level. Although federal travel restrictions were still in place at the time, we were able to submit the necessary paperwork and receive approval to attend in person. Being present as a federal partner allowed for clarification of any federal processes, listening to community concerns, and ensuring alignment between council recommendations and actual federal implementation. In Hilo and Kona, discussions focused on shortline and uku fisheries, giving local fishers direct access to management bodies. These meetings created space for dialogue, to hear concerns, clarify regulations, and strengthen communication between fishers and the regulatory bodies. I helped prepare background materials and later reviewed notes to ensure community input was accurately reflected. What stood out to me was seeing how interconnected the system is. So federal agencies, regional councils, and local fishers all operate under the same management framework, and these meetings brought that structure into one room. And on a more personal note, this was the first time I met my mentor Keith in person after working with him remotely for the last 8 months. Shortline and UKU discussions, there was Inflation Reduction Act funded community consultation meetings focused again in Kona and Hilo. In Kona, conversations centered around shark depredation, offer sizes, market pressures, and competing ocean issues. These topics weren't random, they were raised directly by community members. The purpose of this meeting was to better understand how these issues are affecting fishers and to identify ways management bodies could respond. In Hilo, discussions focused more on infrastructure challenges, access to fisheries, and how environmental changes are affecting fisheries operations. There's often a gap between federal management and local fishing communities, and these consultations were an effort to build that trust, increase transparency, and create more direct lines of communication to actually bridge that gap. Seeing these conversations happen in real time reinforced how interconnected policy and place really are. After attending multiple council meetings and localized community consultations over the past year, I gained a much deeper appreciation for the role in public participation in fisheries management. Fisheries are ultimately about people, and decisions made at the federal level directly affect anglers, commercial fishers, and coastal communities. Building trust between fishing communities and management bodies here, and especially in Hawaii, is essential. There are often local concerns that may not be fully visible at community meetings. Create space to bring those issues forward and start conversations about how they can actually be addressed. The system isn't perfect, but public engagement is an important foundation. It creates transparency, accountability, and opportunities for collaboration. Over the past year, I realized that I'm especially passionate about this side of fisheries management and the part that connects policy to people and science to lived experience. One issue that consistently emerged during the community meetings, especially in Kona, was shark depredation. Fishers spoke about sharks taking catch directly off their lines, affecting both their income and their fishing practices. Hearing those experiences firsthand made it clear that it wasn't just an ecological issue, but it was a community and management challenge that couldn't be addressed by fishers alone. From those conversations, a project emerged, and my mentor asked if I was interested in exploring it further, and this quickly became a passion project for me. A cross-agency team formed across the Pacific Islands Regional Office, the Science Center, and other partners to examine why shark depredation is occurring and what management options that might exist. And this photo is taken from the Pacific Islands Fisheries group on research that they're actively doing on shark depredation. So I was tasked with creating a comprehensive literature review matrix, compiling and synthesizing over 45 scientific studies and reports from around the world. This matrix was designed to answer 5 main questions. First, what is happening? This looked at how often shark depredation occurs, where it happens, and which shark species and fisheries are involved. Second, what are the sharks doing? This focused on shark behavior and ecological patterns that may influence depredation. Third, what are the people experiencing and thinking? So this examined fisher perceptions, attitudes, impacts, and responses to shark depredation. Fourth, what is currently being done? So this reviewed strategies and management actions aimed at reducing depredation or limiting shark interactions. And finally, how is depredation being studied? This included tools, data sources, and research methods used to measure and understand the problem. The goal was to translate a large body of research into something usable, organized, accessible, and practical for managers and scientists here in the Pacific Islands. I later presented the matrix to the team in December of 2025 and answered questions about the global research that I had synthesized. Presenting to such an experienced group of professionals was both really exciting and really nerve-wracking. Because the issue was still developing, I was able to participate on the front end of these efforts in terms of coordinated regional understanding and response. Since that meeting in December, this effort has grown significantly. The region hosted its first shark depredation workshop in February of 2026 in Honolulu, bringing together 52 participants from 4 countries and all 3 US Pacific Island territories to help develop mitigation strategies. Science become a management tool was my work on electronic monitoring in the Pacific Islands pelagic longline fishery. So this photo you see here is an example of an electronic monitoring system installed on a fisher boat. These systems use cameras and sensors to record fishing activity, bycatch, and improve data collection. In 2025, discussions increased about implementing electronic monitoring in the region starting in 2026, and the team needed a clear synthesis of the existing research. So similar to the shark depredation project, I read and organized more than 30 peer-reviewed studies and reports, then categorized them by the study by country, fishery, gear type, year, what was being monitored, along with summaries, links, and citations. I then presented the matrix to the team, and the document became practical reference used for internal discussions about electronic monitoring implementation. So these two projects showed me how applied science can become a management tool, transforming research into something that directly supports decision-making. My internship involved a variety of other tasks that helped me grow professionally. One of the most meaningful independent projects I worked on was drafting a national fish habitat partnership proposal called Clearing the Way, Restoring Molokai Flats for Fishing and Community. The proposal was selected for full funding, which was really exciting. Writing a successful grant and seeing it awarded was a great learning experience, especially knowing it will help me support the fishing communities on Molokai. So on the left-hand side is an example of the flats in Molokai that are granted for the grant. I also had the opportunity to work with the Pacific Islands Regional Office Communications team on an internship feature story where I reflected on the work I was doing and what motivates an interest in fisheries management, and that's a screenshot of the article. Closely with my mentor to refine my resume, ask about federal career pathways, and better understand the hiring process. I was able to ask questions about professional growth and learn from his career journey. Although I was initially nervous about having a fully remote internship and whether I would be able to build meaningful relationships, I can confidently say that I did. The mentorship and connections I developed were one of the most valuable parts of this experience. When I entered graduate school, I believed that policy and management are where meaningful change happens, but meaningful change happens where connections are built. Connections between science and decision-making, between federal agencies and fishing communities, between research and practical tools used in management. Every project I worked on showed me how information can be turned into action. Policy and management are powerful, but they only work when the bridges between people, science, and management are strong, and that's what I was contributing to. I can now see how much this experience required of me and how much I grew. Working within a complex federal system demanded adaptability. Policies shifted, guidance changed mid-project, and priorities evolved. It required professional judgment of understanding when to ask questions, how to communicate clearly, and how to contribute thoughtfully within a structured process. Fisheries management is nuanced. It's not just about biology or policy or community concerns in isolation. It's about asking, how are all these pieces connected? How does a federal system ultimately support communities? How does information move through layers of science, governance, and public participation? This experience showed me how necessary it is to work effectively in federal fisheries management. I entered graduate school curious about how change happens. I'm leaving now with a deeper understanding of how complex systems function and how I can contribute to them in the future. These are my photo credits for the photos on my slides. And I just want to say a big thank you to my mentor, Keith, and to Lisa, Pacific Islands Regional Office and the Sustainable Fisheries Division, the cohort, and all of my family and friends. So mahalo. Yes. The question was, do I think I can see myself joining the federal system? I think I have a really good knowledge of the federal system now, and I feel like it's a better overview of just federal fisheries and fisheries in general. I'm still on the fence if that's exactly where I want to go, just because it's so structured and everything takes a really long time from beginning to end. Um, yes, I'm interested, but I'm open to other options. Fisheries are really small. Typically within the fishing season, like since they're regulated in 2012, there's usually a range between like 1 to maybe 5. That's like if there's 5 people participating, that's like a really big year. And since the time and effort it takes for deep sea fishing, a lot of people are kind of don't want to because there's not a lot of reciprocation back economically. Um, you may have seen them, but it's really, again, it's really niche. So these fishers are mainly selling to really specific people, but yeah. So the structure is really rigid. Okay. So the question was, do I have any recommendations for more public participation within the federal system? Um, yeah, the the structure of public participation is really rigid. There is opportunities for public engagement at every step, like I had mentioned, but when these meetings happen, they're in the middle of the week, in the middle of the day, and most fishers and anglers are working full time, which doesn't give them the opportunity to actually participate in the meetings. So I think more like maybe making them available on the weekends and allowing for a more engaging process as well. There's a lot of trust that I feel like needs to be gained as well. So um, showing as a management body to the community, showing that there's more trust, I think will also engage in more public participation. Oh, I think my strengths lied mostly with the shark depredation work that I was being a part of. It wasn't part of my main task, and it kind of was an opportunity towards the end of my internship. So I think seeing that process unfold from community need and seeing the fishers express their frustrations to the council and to NOAA Fisheries, and seeing how that process evolved from community like engagement to actual groups being formed across different agencies, and assisting in that actual front end of the work. I think that's where my passion grew, and that's where I feel like I put a lot of effort into that end. So yeah.